Hi folks, this is Travis again here at the Homestead, and wanted to talk today about something that could be controversial for some of you, especially those of you that have medical background, and that is planning or preparing for things in your medical gear for things that you typically would not do. More of your major emergency situations, starting an IV, stitching up wounds, even a surgical kit, intubation, things like that, that the average person without proper training would never do, and it's highly not recommended to do. And I'm not recommending that you guys do that either, but it's not something I see covered a lot in medical supplies in a preparedness aspect. And that's typically because in a situation where everything is fine, like it is now, well, in a manner of speaking, if something happens like that, a first aid kit is typically looked at as something to stabilize you, to get you to proper medical help. Well, what if that proper medical help no longer exists? Then your first aid kit isn't really going to work so well, because it's going to stabilize you, but there's no medical help to get you to finish the job. And so it's something to start thinking about. Now, my disclaimer with this is in no way am I advocating people to start doing surgeries or stitching up wounds or intubating people or starting IVs or anything like that. Unless that's what you do for a living and you're properly trained and licensed, I would suggest you stick with going there. But maybe it's something to think about, and there's always ways that you can learn at least a little bit of it. I'm never going to say that, reading it in a book or watching a video is going to be as good as going to school and receiving proper training, but, in a complete, the end of the world as we know it situation, what are you going to do? A large gash on your leg, or, someone needs fluids, or whatever it is, they need to be intubated. And that system that's in place now is no longer available. And it could be something as, as like a certain types of natural disasters. If there was a volcanic eruption or a major earthquake, that could break the system down, at least temporarily. And if you or someone you know in your home needs that type of medical attention, you may not be able to get it to them. And so it's kind of, I get it, it's kind of a shaky ground to talk about that, because, well, I understand. Something as simple as suturing a wound, if you don't do it properly, you can, cause it to become very infected, and the person could actually die from it. Now, I'm not what I would consider a medical professional, but in my past I did work in a hospital. I was also an EMT, was an emergency room technician, and helped out in the surgery as a surgery tech when they needed it. That was a long time ago, my first kind of career, I guess. So I do have a little bit of background, a little bit of training, not much. So I'm at least familiar with some of these things. But something to think about, and this is really just kind of more of a encouraging you to think about it. What if, and I understand like the trauma gear type stuff of a tourniquet, definitely, certain, compression bandages, things like that. But think about it. Most of those types of things are to stabilize the person until you can get them to proper medical help. And that is typically what I see kind of the plan for most people in the preparedness world when it comes to their medical supplies. It's, having the supplies to stabilize the person and get them to medical help. Well, what if that medical help no longer exists? What if it's too dangerous to get them to the hospital? The hospital closes, they're so overwhelmed, or it's just a total collapse, and that help does not exist. Your options are, basically, in that situation, is the person's just going to die, or you could try to do something to help them. And so you need certain equipment to try to do that. And it wouldn't hurt that between now and then, learn as much as you can. There are a lot of books, and again, I know books aren't going to be as good as actual training, but there are a lot of medical books. You can find nursing and medical school books that at thrift stores. Actually, just the other day I was at a thrift store and they had a big old stack of nursing books. And I'm sure they're outdated and everything, but a lot of that information on, say, how to intubate, for example, it's going to be the same whether the book's out of date or not. So there's some supplies, and you know what? These types of basic supplies like that are actually really cheap. You can get them through vet supplies. You can order them on Amazon. And so I get them. They're not expensive to have on hand. I'm not sure that I would ever use them. I might. We do have farm animals, and so I could use them on them if I needed to. If I wasn't able to get to a vet, get them to a vet. Then I also think that, well, what if something happens and, we need this type of medical help, and hey, there happens to be someone that's joined our group that's has the type of training that can use this stuff. So to have the equipment on hand, I think, is a good idea. And again, this stuff typically is not expensive to purchase, and to have some of these types of things on hand. And again, I'm not advocating you using them. You can purchase through like Amazon. You can purchase training apparatuses, devices, whatever. It'd be like a hand that has a cut on it, and you can, stitch it up, or something to learn. And it's what they use in school to teach paramedics and physicians and stuff how to do these things. And you can get those if you want to go to that expense and learn how to use this stuff. But, a lot of it is not that expensive, and it's more than your boo-boo kit. It's more than like what I would consider a trauma kit, meaning something to stop the bleeding to get them somewhere. So it's something different than that. One of the things that isn't a lot of times considered, and I don't see a lot always talked about in first aid kits, but I highly advocate having it on hand, not just for medical reasons. There's lots of other uses, and that's super glue. That's right, super glue. I advocate having this because you can close up certain wounds very easily with super glue. We've used it on our animals at times, and it does work well. And this is very similar to what they use in the hospitals, in emergency rooms. So it's also extremely cheap. And like I said, there's lots of other uses. So this is something that every person that's a homesteader, prepper, preparedness person should have this on hand, or several of these on hand. And like I said, they're 2 for $1 usually, or something like that. I didn't get all my stuff out. I thought I had my sutures kit and everything, but I grabbed the wrong stuff. But stuff like an IV kit, super cheap. Get it on Amazon or through vet supplies. Surgery kits, and I'm not saying that I'm going to be doing open heart surgery or something like that, but there are tools that are in here that could be used to save someone's life, and it's right there. Of course, they need to be sterilized, all that kind of stuff. But this is something that you could learn. It doesn't mean that you're able to now, perform, a tonsillectomy on your child. They need it. I'm not advocating that at all. The system is still in place. We have good medical services. Use them. I'm not in any way advocating that you guys go out and buy a surgery kit and use it, on your family and all that kind of stuff. This is something to have on hand if the poo-poo hits the fan and those kinds of services aren't available. There's other things that, to consider that's not necessarily medical, although it has a lot of medical application, is something like having a distill, something that you can distill water. You can use it for herbs, and you can also use it to make ethanol alcohol, or what we'd call around here moonshine. Of course, making moonshine is a federal offense. Some states allow it, but it is still against the law federally. So I do not advocate doing that. But it's not illegal to have the equipment and everything, falls apart, if that's something that you would need, because there are some medical applications to that. Also, you can use it to produce fuel. I would, of course, use it. And so, think about these things that you may not use in your daily life now, or they may be taboo, or they may be illegal, or frowned upon, but in a, the end of the world situation, that's all you got. So I encourage you to think about your medical supplies. I'm really big on medical supplies. Like I said, I've worked in an ER, I've worked out in the field. That was like 100 years ago. But, so I've seen enough to know that, having proper medical supplies is really important, and I feel that it needs to be more than just bandages. Very important, though. More than just, trauma-stopping blood. Very important. You really need to kind of span out a little bit and think of other, a lot of the, blood stopping, the tourniquet type stuff, comes from military background. They give them tourniquets, and they have compression bandages and things like that, which makes sense. But it's because they further back the line, they have proper medical facilities. So it's basically out on the field in combat, it's to stop the bleeding, get the guy somewhat stabilized, and get him in the back so that they can bandage him up properly. Well, in our situation that we might be in the future, there may not be the guys in the back of the line that can properly stitch you up and take care of the injury. So what you need to be doing now is learning how to do that on your own, and getting the supplies. Again, I'm not advocating actually practicing these techniques and what you're learning, but at least have the books. It's better than nothing. I know you're saying, well, but if you don't do it right, you could kill someone, or you could call. I get it. Trust me. I understand infection, nick an artery and cause them to bleed out. I get all that. But in a situation that, society around us has completely collapsed and you have no other alternative, at least you have it there, and you can make a decision at that time, should we go down this road, as opposed to not having any books, knowledge, or equipment, and then you don't have that option. And the only option for that person is just to lay there and die. So I would encourage you guys to think about this, find information to learn about these types of things, how to do some simple, and again, I'm not talking about doing an open heart surgery and, removing someone's appendix and stuff. A surgical kit can be used for other things than major surgeries. IVs, intubating equipment, suture kits, things like that, that you can do if you're very careful about it in a really bad situation and keep the person alive. Again, disclaimer, I am not advocating anyone doing this now. This is something that, if everything falls apart and we do not have that medical system to take someone to, at least you have an option. And it's not something I've seen talked about a whole lot when it comes to first aid kits, but I think it's important. So, anyways, the information's out there. Use it as you wish. If it's not something you want to do, then that's fine. But I just wanted to talk about it for a few minutes. Anyways, thanks for listening and subscribing, and your comments. I love them. I try to get to them as much as I can. So keep them coming. All right, you guys have a blessed day. Shalom.